And those that are able, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. And John, I think you have some, we'll start with you with the first cases that are withdrawn.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today's meeting will allow virtual and on-site participation. I would like to take a moment to explain the meeting format as each case is presented. We will recognize those on-site and virtual in support and opposed to a specific case. For virtual attendees, to support or oppose a case or indicate you wish to speak, please type into the Q&A box on your computer. To support a zoning case, type the following. For support, type SUP and then the case number. So for instance, it would be to support a case, you type in SUP Z123. Or if you wish to support a case and also speak on the case, you would want to type in SUP Z123 speak. To oppose a zoning case, you would type in the following command. You would type in OPP to oppose the case. So for instance, it would be OPP Z123. Or to also oppose a case and speak in opposition, you would type in OPP Z123 speak. Speakers will be called by name. Your line will be unmuted during your time to speak. And you will say your name, where you live, and also affirm that you've been sworn in. The Board of Commissioners would need to revise your hearing procedures to allow virtual participation. And I'm going to read those in right now, Mr. Chairman of the Board. Because of the unprecedented circumstances of the COVID-19 pandemic, the staff would ask that you make the following changes to your zoning meeting rules for this Board of Commissioners zoning hearing. Number one, Board of Commissioners, staff, and citizens be allowed to participate in the meeting virtually. Number two, Board of Commissioner members can vote by voice or by hand signal. Number three, the time allotted for applicants and those opposed to applications be 12 minutes for each side. If the opposition presents for longer than 12 minutes, then the equivalent number of minutes, more than the original 12 minutes, will be given to the applicant. Number four, persons wishing to be counted as either in favor or opposition to an application will be recognized, and the number of persons provided to the Board of Commissioners. Number five, persons who wish to speak virtually in favor or in opposition to an application will identify themselves accordingly to the IS technical staff for participation during today's presentation of the application. And number six, persons who speak virtually will acknowledge and affirm that his or her testimony before the Board of Commissioners is under oath and affirmed to be truthful. Otherwise, all other Board of Commissioners zoning meeting rules will apply except for as modified. So we would need a motion and a vote to adopt these rules for today's hearing, Mr. Chairman of the Board.
Okay, and so moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? We can use the keyboard today, so no call. Any questions? Discussion? Okay, so what I'll ask you to do is go ahead and, since we're not using the board today, those that support, please raise your hand. And I see all five hands, so it passes 5-0.
Thank you.
And for those that are not here today, Commissioner Burrow is attending this meeting virtually.
Okay, today's hearing will be conducted with the following process and procedure. Each case will be called in numerical order. When this case is called, would the applicant please stand and raise their hand to show that they are in attendance? Then we're going to call to see if there's anyone opposed to the specific case. We would ask that the opposition also stand and raise their hand so they be counted for the official record. After recognizing the applicant and any opposition, the applicant and any opposition will be asked to come forward to be sworn in so they can present testimony to the Board of Commissioners. The applicant will testify first, and then the opposition, if any, will testify second. It's important to note that each side gets 12 minutes to state their case of concerns. There's not a process to reserve your time or for rebuttal, so convey all your information to the board within your 12-minute time period. Additionally, if more than one person wishes to speak on a case, you may want to coordinate with each other about what you're going to talk about, because each side only gets 10 minutes and you don't want to cover the same information twice. Then after both sides have had their 10-minute presentation period, the board will start to discuss the case at hand. From the discussion, they may ask one or more speakers to come back to the front or virtually for questions or comments. And after that, the board will make a decision to either approve, deny, continue, or hold the case at hand. There is one case on today's printed agenda which has been withdrawn without prejudice and will not be heard today. As rezoning case Z20 of 2020, Core 5 Industrial Partners LLC. This case has been withdrawn without prejudice and will not be heard today. Mr. Chairman and Board, there is one case on today's agenda that was to be heard, and the applicant has let me know that they want to withdraw the case. Rezoning case Z27 of 2020, Wilson's Classic Homes Incorporated. The applicant would like to withdraw this application without prejudice. Mr. Chairman and Board.
All right, so that's Commissioner Ott, right?
That's Commissioner.
Yes, it is. So, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to. Oh, you're reading the. Oh, never mind. You need to loosen your tie so that I don't make a mistake.
So it's rezoning case Z27 of 2020, Wilson's Classic Homes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize, Commissioner Gambles. All right, I got my 20s mixed up here. And I wear the right tie today, it didn't work.
It's okay, we're all gonna get there. I will make a motion to allow Z27 to be withdrawn without prejudice.
We have a second, any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Commissioner,
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the motion.
that's the motion to withdraw without prejudice.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I'm calling the question, Commissioner Burrow. All right, passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you. There are a number of cases on today's printed agenda which have been continued by the Planning Commission or the Board of Commissioners and will not be heard today. First case.
John?
John, we're going to continue Z24, right?
Yeah, I'm going to get to that when I'm done reading this.
Okay.
That's another 20s.
Yeah. Rezoning case Z62 of 2019, Embry Development Company LLC. The case has been continued by the staff and will not be heard today. This case was continued by the Planning Commission until the July 7th, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z62 of 2019 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z76 of 2019, St. Benedict's Episcopal Day School Incorporated. This case was continued by the staff until the July 7th, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z76 of 2019 will not be heard today. SLEP 4 of 2019, A1 Auto Cores LLC. This case was continued by the staff until the July 21st, 2020 Board of Commissioners zoning hearing. So SLEP 4 of 2019 will not be heard today. SLEP 17 of 2019, St. Benedict's Episcopal Day School Incorporated. This case was continued by the staff until the July 7th, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So SLEP 17 of 2019 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z7 of 2020, Seven Springs Development Company Incorporated. This case was held by the Planning Commission until the July 7, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z7 of 2020 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z13 of 2020, Arturo Martinez. This case was continued by the staff until the July 7, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z13 of 2020 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z28 of 2020, Trayton LLC. This case was held by the Planning Commission until the July 7th, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z28 of 2020 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z29 of 2020, Toll Southeast LP Company Incorporated. This case was held by the Planning Commission until the July 7th, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z29 of 2020 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z30 of 2020, Ralph S. Elsmery. This case was continued by the Planning Commission until the July 7th, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z30 of 2020 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z32 of 2020, NGI Acquisitions LLC. This case was continued by the Planning Commission until the July 7th, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z32 of 2020 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z33 of 2020, Flournoy Development Group, LLC. This case was continued by the staff until the July 7th, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z33 of 2020 will not be heard today. Rezoning case Z36 of 2020, Greenhouse Properties of Atlanta, LLC. This case was continued by the staff until the July 7th, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So Z36 of 2020 will not be heard today. SLEP 4 of 2020, White Oak Longline Holdings LLC. This case was continued by the staff until the July 7th, 2020 Planning Commission zoning hearing. So SLEP 4 of 2020 will not be heard today. Other business number 30 of 2020, the Home Depot Incorporated. This case was continued by the staff until the July 21st, 2020 Board of Commissioners zoning hearing. So other business number 30 of 2020 will not be heard today. Mr. Chairman and Board, there are a number of cases on today's agenda which also need to be continued, and we got word late on these. So we're going to need motions and votes on all these I'm about to read in. Rezoning case Z23 of 2020, Park Lane Capital 2 LLC. The applicant is asking this case be continued until your July hearing date, Mr. Chairman and Board.
Okay, and that's Commissioner Burrows, I believe.
Yes, sir.
So we'll entertain a motion to continue, Commissioner.
I make a motion to continue Z23 to the July 21st zoning hearing.
We have a second. Any discussion? I'll call the question. Please raise your hand. Passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Next case is rezoning case Z24 of 2020, Branch Acquisition Company LLC. This case does need to be continued, Mr. Chairman and Board. There are some things that need to be worked out before the board should hear it. So the staff would ask the board to continue rezoning case Z24 of 2020.
Commissioner Ott.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to continue Z24 until the July zoning hearing to correct errors and inaccuracies in the zoning documents.
Okay.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Call the question. And passes 5-0. Thank you.
LUP 6 of 2020, Tammy Franks Finazzo. I did get a request from her last night to continue the case in July, Mr. Chairman. She is feeling ill today, so I would ask the board to continue this case to your July 21st hearing date.
Commissioner Gamble.
I will allow this to occur, but this will be heard in July. That needs to be made clear.
Okay, sure. So could you make the motion?
I make a motion to continue LUP 6 until the July 21st hearing date.
Okay, and we have a second. Any discussion? Call the question. Passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you. LUP 9 of 2020, Megan Foose. The staff would ask the board to continue this land use permit for 1 month, Mr. Chairman, until your July 21st date. And this is in Commissioner Burrow's district.
Okay, Commissioner Burrow?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to continue Water 9 until the July 21st zoning hearing.
And we have a second. Any discussion? Call the question. Passes 5-0. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, board, that has it for what I have on my list. I believe Commissioner Cupid has one he wants to continue also.
Sure.
Yes. Yes, I'd like to continue other business item number 27 until July.
Okay, do we have a second? Any discussion? Call the question. Passes.
I couldn't hear the motion, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Commissioner Cupid.
To continue other business item number 27.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
And we have a second. Any discussion? Now I'm calling the question. Passes 5-0. Thank you.
Okay. I would like to ask the people in today's audience, if you have a cell phone, please turn the volume off on your cell phone. The ringing does interfere to broadcast and presentation. Any person wishing to speak before the Board of Commissioners must file a campaign contribution disclosure statement. If within 2 years immediately preceding the filing of a rezoning application, a campaign contribution totaling $250 more was made to a current member of the Board of Commissioners. Additional information about this is located on the table in the back of the room. I want to remind applicants, opposition, or any interested party that information is due to this board the Wednesday prior to this hearing. Any information submitted to this board after the Wednesday due date may or may not be considered by the board at their discretion. At this point, Mr. Chairman, I'm ready to start the consent agenda.
Okay.
Cobb County Board of Commissioners, a zoning hearing consent agenda for June 16, 2020. First case is rezoning case Z25, Brandon Investments LLC. The applicant requests rezoning from R20 to LI for the purpose of an office warehouse in land lots 586, 610, and 611 of the 18th District. The property is located on the north side of Factory Shaw's Road, northeast of White Road, on the south side of Interstate 20. The Planning Commission recommends approval of Z25 to the LI zoning district, subject to the following conditions. Number one, site plan received by the zoning division, and I'm going to correct this, Mr. Chairman, on the agenda it's February 6, 2020, but the date should have been April 8, 2020 for the site plan. With the district commissioner approving minor modifications. Number 2, letter of agreeable conditions from Mr. Kevin Moore dated May 27, 2020. Number 3, variance to reduce the required 50-foot landscape buffer adjacent to the residential R20 property to build a proposed 14-foot wall and parking lot encroachment. Number 4, Fire Department comments and recommendations. Number 5, Stormwater Management Division comments and recommendations. Number 6, Water and Sewer Division comments and recommendations. And number 7, Department of Transportation comments and recommendations. The applicant is present, Mr. Chairman. Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z25? Let the record show there's no one opposed.
Chairman, I have one add for a stipulation, and it's the basic one, Kevin, just for the district commissioner to approve the landscaping for the site, particularly, I'm concerned about the buffer adjacent to residential. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to add that one in, Robin. Okay. Rezoning case Z31, Jean-Claude Alfred requests a rezoning from NRC and R20 to R20 for a single-family residence in land lot 155 of the 17th district. The property is located on the southeast side of Austell Road, north of the southernmost intersection of Austell Circle and Austell Road. The Planning Commission recommends approval of Z31 to the R20 zoning district, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, site plan received by the zoning division on February 26, 2020, with the district commissioner approving minor modifications. Variance of the required minimum front yard setback from required 40 feet to 32 feet. Number 3, Water and Sewer Division comments and recommendations. And number 4, Department of Transportation comments and recommendations. Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z31? Let the record show there's no one opposed. Rezoning case Z34, Purdy United LLC, requests a rezoning from GC and HI to HI for a warehouse in land lots 370 and 423 of the 17th district. The property is located on the northeast side of Dixie Drive, formerly known as Dixie Avenue, northwest of Homer Corn Road. The Planning Commission recommends approval of Z34 to the HI zoning district, subject to the following conditions. Site plan received by the zoning division on March 6, 2020, with the district commissioner approving minor modifications. Number 2, letter of agreeable conditions from Mr. Kevin Moore dated May 27, 2020. Number 3, variance to reduce the required side yard setback from 20 feet to 0 feet for the existing structure. Number 4, variance to reduce the major side setback from 25 feet to 0 feet for the existing structure. Number 5, Stormwater Management Division comments and recommendations. Number 6, Water and Sewer Division comments and recommendations. And number 7, Department of Transportation comments and recommendations. The applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z34? Let the record show there's no one opposed. Rezoning case Z35, Cobb County Board of Commissioners request a rezoning from R20 IF and HI to RA5 for existing single-family houses, which are attached and detached in land lots 1163, 1164, 1165, 1204, 1205, and 1206 of the 19th district. The property is located on the south side of Austell Powder Springs Road, the north and south sides of Bothwell Street, the east and west sides of Newark Avenue, the north side of Mathis Drive, the north and south sides of Cross Street, the north, south, east, and west sides of Bloomfield Avenue, and the east and west sides of Clark Street. The Planning Commission recommends approval of Z35 to the RA5 zoning district, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, a site plan received by the zoning division on March 9, 2020, that depicts the number of lots with the district commissioner approving minor modifications. Number 2, variances as necessary to allow the existing structures to remain, with the zoning division manager to use the 2019 and 2020 Cobb County GIS aerial photography and Cobb County tax assessor records to determine legal non-conforming structures. Number 3, Water and Sewer Division comments and recommendations. And number 4, Department of Transportation comments and recommendations. Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z35? Let the record show there's no one opposed. Moving into land use permits, LUP 5, Most Reverend Joel M. Conzen, SM, as duly constituted diocesan of the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Atlanta and/or his successors in office as trustee of AOA Parish Real Estate Trust, request a temporary land use permit for a Catholic campus ministry in land lot 97 of the 20th district. The property is located on the west side of Campus Loop Road across from Paulding Avenue. The Planning Commission recommends approval of lot 5 for 24 months, subject to the following conditions. All parking to be within the driveway or at Kennesaw State University. Is there anyone here opposed to LUP 5? Let the record show there's no one opposed. LUP 10, Gregory Bowen requests a temporary land use permit to allow temporary occupancy of a recreational vehicle in land lot 146 of the 20th District. The property is located on the east side of Mars Hill Church Road, south of Witt Station Run. The Planning Commission recommends approval of LUP 10 for 6 months, subject to the following conditions. RV to be parked on a hardened surface that is not visible from the street, and Department of Transportation comments and recommendations. Is there anyone here opposed to LUP 10? Let the record show there's no one opposed. LUP 11, Maria Claudia Ortega requests a temporary land use permit for the purpose of a daycare in land lots 949 and 950 of the 16th District. The property is located on the east side of Allgood Road, north of Camellia Drive. The Planning Commission recommends approval of LUP 11 for 24 months, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, maximum of 20 children. Number 2, maximum of 4 employees. Number 3, no signs. Number 4, no parking in the right-of-way. And number five, Department of Transportation comments and recommendations. Is there anyone here opposed to LUP 11? Let the record show there's no one opposed. SLUP 13 of 2018, Kennesaw Jewish Center Incorporated, request a special land use permit for the purpose of a student center for students of the Jewish faith attending Kennesaw State University in land lots 94 and 97 of the 20th District. The property is located on the east side of Frey Lake Road, northwest of Campus Loop Road. Staff recommends approval, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, site plan dated January 31st, 2020, with the District Commissioner approved minor modifications. Number 2, letter from Mr. Kevin Moore dated June 10th, 2020, which includes all attachments and site plan. Number 3, District Commissioner to approve the final landscape plan. Number 4, District Commissioner to approve the building architecture. Number 5, hours of operation are to be consistent with Kennesaw State University operating hours. Number 6, no outside speakers or amplified sound. Number 7, Fire Department comments and recommendations. Number 8, Site Plan Review Division's comments and recommendations. Number 9, Stormwater Management Division comments and recommendations. Number 10, Water and Sewer Division comments and recommendations. And number 11, Department of Transportation comments and recommendations. The applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to SLUP 13 of 2018?
Mr. Chairman,
Sure, go ahead, Commissioner Burrow.
thank you. I want to make sure the Pine Tree Civic Association letter and support is included from June 11th. I didn't hear John said that or not.
Was that included in the package,
Well,
John?
that was going to be a final note here, Mr.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. I have an acknowledgement of the letter of support from Pine Tree Civic Association dated June 11, 2020, which is on file with the clerk.
Okay, it's on file, Commissioner Burrow.
Okay, so that can be added now?
Sure, it might be part of the notes.
Okay. And I would just like to say thank you. This has been a long process. We have been working on a site distance easement with KSU, and this has been a year and a half in the makings, and I appreciate the patience from the Jewish Center and the support from Pine Tree and all staff's assistance as well. And Mr. Moore, thank you.
And Commissioner Burrow, I want to commend you on your skill in getting this through onto the consent agenda. That's nothing sort of remarkable. So congratulations to you and all your partners.
Thank you.
Okay, SLUP 5 of 2020, Harkinda Bilar requests a special land use permit for the purpose of automobile and truck sales and service facilities for used and pre-owned cars and trucks in land lot 648 of the 16th District. The property is located on the north side of Cobb Place Boulevard, east of Barrett Lakes Boulevard. The Planning Commission recommends approval of SLUP 5, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, site plan received by the Zoning Division on March 10, 2020, with the District Commissioner approving minor modifications. Reduce the required number of parking spaces from 421 plus 1 space per vehicle to 385 spaces total. Number 3, increase the impervious surface maximum from 80% to meet the existing site conditions. And number 4, Department of Transportation comments and recommendations. Is there anyone here opposed to SLUP 5? Let the record show there's no one opposed. I believe Commissioner Burrow had one change on this one.
Okay, Commissioner Burrow, go ahead.
Yes. I would like to add that, 421 parking spaces, that's the minimum requirement, and I'd like to allow 421 parking spaces.
Okay,
That's the only change.
all right, got that one. Okay, moving into other business items on the consent agenda. Other business item number 17 of 2020 is to consider a site plan amendment for Shane Feemister on behalf of Miller's Ale House regarding rezoning application Z116 of 2005 for property located on the south side of Chastain Road, east of Busby Drive, and land lot 461 of the 16th District. Staff recommends approval, subject to number one, site plan received March 9, 2020, with the district commissioner approving minor modifications, and number two, all previous stipulations not in conflict with this amendment to remain in effect. Is there anyone here opposed to other business item number 17? Let the record show there's no one opposed. Other business item number 24 of 2020 is to consider a stipulation amendment for Powers Ferry Woods Office Park LP regarding rezoning case Z42 of 2019. The property is located on the west side of Shadowwood Parkway, south of Powers Ferry Road, in land lots 1008 and 1009 of the 17th District. Staff recommends approval, subject to the following conditions. Number one, letter from Mr. Adam Rosen dated June 8th, 2020. And number two, all previous stipulations not in conflict with this amendment to remain in effect. Is there anyone here opposed to other business item number 24? Let the record show there's no one opposed.
All right, John, I have one change, and Adam just walked in. I don't think he's going to have a problem with it. The intent is that the new developer, Worthing, will develop consistent with Z42. And I mean, I use the word consistent, and Adam used the word consistent, but I want to change that sentence to say that the applicant is proposing development on the subject property, which will be built as approved with Z42.
Thank you, Commissioner. We're agreeable to that change, that modification.
So, did you get that? That's all the change.
Okay, thank you.
Got it.
Other business item number 28 of 2020 is to consider a stipulation and site plan approval for Corner Point Partners LLC regarding applications Z29 of 2019 and SLUP 6 of 2019, for property located on the west side of Floyd Road, south of White Boulevard, in land lots 31 and 32 of the 17th District. Staff recommends approval, subject to the following conditions. Number one, stormwater management comments. Number two, letter from Mr. Garvis L. Sams Jr. dated June 9, 2020. And number three, all previous stipulations not in conflict with this amendment to remain in effect. The applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed or other business number 28? Let the record show there's no one opposed. And that completes the consent agenda, Mr. Chairman and Board.
Okay. In that case, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as revised. Second. Discussion?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, call the question. Passes 5-0. Thank you. We're going to take a short break here for administrative purposes here, and then we'll resume with the next case.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. I thank everybody for your patience. Just for another administrative note, Commissioner Burrow, who is with us virtually, is now not with part of this meeting, so it'll just be the four of us that are here in attendance here in the room today. We'll conduct the rest of the hearing. So that, let me see if I can find the right case, Z26, right?
Correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, all right.
Rezoning case Z26 of 2020, Glorious Venture LLC requests a rezoning from GC to NRC for the purpose of a convenience store fuel sales in land lot 154 of the 17th District. The property is located on the southeast, at the southeast intersection of Austell Road and Sandtown Road. The applicant is present. Is there anyone here in person opposed to rezoning case Z26? And Yolanda, is there anyone online opposing Z26?
I believe we have a person who wants to speak in opposition of Z26. At this time, I'd like to ask all of our virtual attendees, if you would like to speak in support or opposition of any case, please type into the Q&A box at this time so that we can confirm the case that you're interested in.
Okay, thank you, Yolanda. We're going to have the applicant speak first, and then the opposition will speak second. So,
Thank you.
So are you the real Mr. Moore, or are you virtual?
I'm for real today.
You're for real, you're not an avatar.
Not an avatar today. And it certainly is good to see everybody,
Okay, good to have you back.
even from a distance, so.
I think we're ready for your case.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I'm Kevin Moore here on behalf of the applicant Glorious Venture in this application for rezoning. This property is located at the intersection of Austell Road and Sandtown Road. It is a 0.690 acre parcel that you can see on your screen. It is currently zoned general commercial. You can see the other red properties adjacent to this and across the streets, also zoned general commercial, as well as the LRO piece. So you can see that these properties adjacent to it are zoned commercially and not residential. We are proposing rezoning to NRC for neighborhood retail commercial for a neighborhood market convenience store and fuel sales, but appropriately sized to the neighborhood market that this property finds itself in and is represented by. I think you also, as noted by staff and in the report and information, this property is within a neighborhood activity center on your future land use plan, as well as the property across the street that you see that is zoned R20, and the surrounding GC properties are all within the neighborhood activity center shown on your future land use map, and now you can see that visually as well. That is all of the pink area, and you can see this property there as part of that neighborhood activity center. As you know, your Cobb County zoning ordinance requires a GC or general commercial zone property that is within a neighborhood activity center to be brought in for rezoning, and it's required to be rezoned consistent with the land use plan designation of a neighborhood activity center. The proposal and rezoning application that we have presented is consistent with the neighborhood activity center. As noted by staff, that was their conclusion, as well as part of their recommendation for approval. Now I'd like to go through and show you the site plan, because I think there are some items to that I want to highlight for you on the site plan as well. I'm going to switch over to that plan. This proposal is for a maximum 3,000 square foot convenience store neighborhood market. And it's going to take just a minute for that to switch over, and then we'll have that. We still don't have the other pieces of this audiovisual available to us, so everything's by screen. Now you can see the site plan, which really focuses in on this parcel at the intersection of Austell and Sandtown Road, which you can see. One of the things I really want to highlight for you is the buffers that are proposed here. Those are buffers that were put in place by this applicant in looking and being sensitive to where this property is situated and its surrounding area. But particular of note, these are not required buffers. There is a 40-foot landscape buffer along the southern boundary of this property, and you can see that represented on the site plan, as well as a smaller buffer adjacent, kind of on the Austell Road side. That's adjacent to the existing LRO or low-rise office existing use. We've put in place a buffer there, as well as an expanded 40-foot buffer. In neither instance is a buffer required because both of those properties, as I showed you earlier, are already zoned commercially. So that would only apply, buffers would only would be required if they're residential zone properties. These are not. But in deference to and being sensitive to the surrounding residential areas that are on Sandtown Road, we wanted to make sure we put that buffer in place to create an attractive environment for that, as well as you can see where the placement of the detention area is. We've shown an additional buffer along Sandtown Road of additional landscaping and detailed that out so that you can see the detention pond as well will be fully screened and tie into that buffer that we have identified for you. Those landscaping items are part of our stipulation letter that is dated June 10th and have been a part of our proposal from day one. And I think that really highlights what this applicant has done in working with his team and putting this together to be sensitive to all aspects of the neighborhood in which this parcel is located. In addition, in reviewing this application, your Planning Commission recommended 2 additional stipulations that we also were in agreement with and that are part of the Planning Commission's comments and recommendations. Number 1, there would be access restrictions. That is, tanker trucks would be restricted to the Austell Road access only. So no tanker truck access from Soundtown Road. In addition, there was an hours of operation restriction and limitation placed. The hours of operation would be limited to 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. Again, in deference to this property's location, which it does serve a neighborhood, but also is in a neighborhood in that sense of a neighborhood activity center, which is part of that future land use plan recommendation. In addition, we were requested to provide an architectural rendering. So the architect has provided that, and that should be the next screen. If I can get some help with that. And we have the architectural rendering of this neighborhood market convenience store. What you see as well, you can see this attractively done. Those columns are columns that will be in keeping with a very quality appearance and a very clean appearance for this proposed store, and one we think will fit in very nicely with Austell Road and its intersection at Sandtown Road. Again, with this architectural rendering, that was also included in our June 10th stipulation letter that calls out the facade treatments as well as the appearance. And again, this is something that will be built, if approved, and constructed in accordance with these plans that has been stipulated as it relates to the additional landscaping and buffering that are not required and not even requested was added to this and brought forward by the applicant and his team in light of where this application and where this property sits to create a very attractive appearance from all sides and from all points of view for this property. Again, this application has been reviewed by your professional zoning staff who gave it a thorough review and recommended approval based on many of the items and additional items that I've reviewed with you today. In addition, your Planning Commission recommended approval of this application for rezoning with the additional stipulations that I have reviewed with you here today. I'm here and I can answer any questions that you may have and respectfully request your approval consistent with the staff and consistent with the Planning Commission's recommendations for rezoning of this property. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I believe we have one online, or someone wants to make a comment via telephone?
Yeah, we do have Diane Emmon. Go ahead, Diane.
Hi, thank you. I have a presentation that should be up also. Hear me?
Yes, you're fine. Go ahead. Yeah, and we see a presentation also.
Perfect. I am Diane Eman and live in Sandtail Division here in Marietta, an older neighborhood established in the mid-50s. While I'm attending today speaking in opposition to Z26, I was joining with the residents.
Excuse me, ma'am, could you get a little bit closer to your microphone?
I'm sorry?
Could you get a little bit closer to your microphone and speak into it?
I'm sorry, I'm on headset because I have a puppy who may start barking. I'll try it though.
Okay, all right. Thanks for clarifying that. I appreciate that.
At any rate, I'm here joining the residents of Z23 also, which appears to have been continued to July 7th. In my opinion, if this rezoning is approved, it somewhat confirms our opinion that the staff and planning commission have no regard for the residents in older neighborhoods. Next slide, please. The applicants, if you could back it up, the applicants that I checked on the Georgia State Corporation site reflect the following. Floyd Adventures was registered less than 3 years ago to conduct business. It is active and compliant, but as a landscaping tree service is their business purpose, not convenience fuel. CIMDE Enterprises LLC was registered to conduct business in December 2010. However, their registration expired at the end of December 2019. It is listed as active but non-compliant, with no business purpose. This does not reflect stability to support competition in the area for this type of business. Next slide, please. You can move on to the next slide. At the Planning Commission hearing, I was told that most residents speak to the businesses and similar businesses in the area as if it was not important. However, direct and indirect competition in the area is important. From South Cobb Drive to the East-West Connector, there are 9 convenience stores to serve fuel. The market area that I research usually extends a half a mile to a mile and a half and takes approximately 3,000 to 6,000 people living or working in the market area to support a single station. Somehow I don't think there's that many people living in that area to support this business. Next slide, please. The indirect competition. 2 family dollar stores within a half a mile, a food mart, a Dollar General, a Walmart neighborhood grocery store, CVS, Farmers Market grocery store, Walgreens, and a Target, all between South Cobb Drive and the East-West Connector. Next slide, please. We also expressed concerns, to move to the next slide, regarding safety in the area. In addition to Marietta Housing Authority affordable housing project at Cunningham and Oxdale that is under construction right now, yet another convenience store with fuel will add to the potential criminal activity. We've been working very hard in my neighborhood to clean up our area from drug use of 2 vacant homes that have now been bought and renovated and are very nice. In addition, despite all the modern health and safety guidelines, gas stations can still pose significant hazards to neighboring communities. Just for my own curiosity, I researched reported criminal activity in our general area between the week of May 27th and June 3rd. There were 2 theft by takings, criminal trespassing, a drug and narcotic violation, simple battery, reckless conduct and endangerment, and I'm not sure what the terroristic threat was, but it could have been related to the protests that were going on at the time. Next slide, please. I'd like to speak now to the site plan, transportation, and other potential impacts. Next slide. While I appreciate the rendering that was provided of the building, it somewhat appears to be clip art to me. when asking for a rendering, most often, you're going to get a rendering of the entire project, not just a building. Also, at the Planning Commission hearing, there was a comment made that the property already has an asphalt surface and there probably will be little to no runoff from construction. I just retired from over 40 years in the construction industry, and I can assure you that once construction begins, that asphalt surface is not going to be relevant to runoff. There will be some, but thankfully, they do have a retention pond on the property or on the site plan. As far as transportation is concerned, this is not going to be a safe intersection. There's no signal here, and if it is approved, I would respectfully request, and another stipulation be included, that vehicles departing the property onto Austell Road are not allowed to make U-turns to go north. All vehicles, including particularly fuel tankers. Next slide, please. Other potential impacts. Our property values in the adjacent older neighboring neighborhoods are going to go down. There's going to be blight. Most likely, this will become yet another abandoned structure due to the excessive competition in the area already. And we're going to be looking at yet another unkept property on Austell Road, which leads to the community character. How do we know from the rendering if this project will comply with the Austell Road guidelines? In addition, I saw in the stipulation letter that the applicant agreed to Georgia State Transportation guidelines. What are those? Nothing was said that I read. Also, there's going to be crime, there's going to be lighting issues, there's going to be noise, and there's going to be additional traffic. Next slide, please. I am giving a big thumbs down on approval of this project or application, sorry. Next slide. The staff, planning commission, and other decision makers, such as the Board of Commissioners, should consider need when asked to act on a request for a rezoning application. Don't ignore local neighborhoods' cries for help to maintain their property values. Many of the homes in our older neighborhoods are well constructed and being renovated, as I mentioned earlier, to either rent or sell. We want to preserve the history of our older neighborhoods, not destroy the value. I am for the Board of Commissioners to send this request back to planning for the applicants to provide market research to support their request for rezoning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Is anybody else online in opposition? Okay. Hearing none. Commissioner Cupid.
This is,
Oh, I apologize, Commissioner.
This is what
This
happens
is
when
what
I'm not
happens when you
sitting
move.
next to you.
That's
I
right,
know,
you
I'm
moved.
not
It's your
sitting next
fault.
to you.
I apologize.
It's okay. It's okay. Thank you. I would like to go ahead and make a motion to approve Z26 using the PC recommendations except for the following modifications. With number 1, the architectural style of the building to be built on the property to be approved by the district commissioner. And Mr. Moore, let me know if this is okay. I know we discussed it on the phone. I would like to add, prior to approval, architectural rendering to be reviewed by representatives of people looking after neighborhoods.
yes, that's perfectly agreeable.
Okay. So Robin, if we could add that, please. Again, the hours of operation will be from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. Number 3 from PC is still good. I would like to strike number 9 of the stipulation letter Cobb County Code has language that addresses these type of changes and therefore needs to be in effect. I would like to add a new number 4, that the Austell Road Design Guidelines to remain in effect. And then staff comments and recommendations not otherwise in conflict. And that's my motion.
Okay,
I'll second it.
I have a second.
Just a
Discussion.
couple of comments. First off, I want to thank the opposition. That was a very thorough presentation. I just want to kind of point out one thing, and there was, I know she had a slide on competition. We are not legally allowed to determine a zoning case based on competition. I hear what you're saying. However, that cannot be one of the factors that this board uses to determine a zoning.
Okay. I just have Commissioner Cooper, do you have any comments? Just a couple of questions. I noticed there were a significant number of violations. Have those all been resolved? And does the current owner, do they apply to him or a previous owner?
Hey, John, while you're looking up, Kevin, what's on this property right now? Is it vacant?
It's vacant. It's a vacant asphalt lot, which is what created from the prior owner. And
I was just curious. I just saw, I mean, it was part of the record, there were a lot of violations and prior owner, okay, fine. And I saw the 70% impervious, and I'm guessing the stormwater, this is all gonna be addressed so we can bring that down to a controllable level? Okay, fine, just something I saw there. All right, I have no other questions. Commissioner Cupid, you have some questions? Sure.
I'm unable to support this application. I drive by this site every time that I leave the county. I drive by it frequently. I know from my observations and from being a district commissioner not far from here, this development will be disruptive to the character of that area. Even though it's zoned NRC, something less intense is much more appropriate for a part of Austell Road that is much more stable than other parts of Austell Road, which have a hodgepodge of development, higher crime, which has come up to our police officers' attention, which puts the food mart, which is not far from here, a nuisance abatement. There's higher crime, and there's a confluence of issues here. I have driven by the site and seen multiple accidents. There's a lot of traffic that drives extremely fast on Austell Road. Even just seeing the Texaco that's on county services have deliveries, it's a challenge. Putting it here in a more residential area, which is again, much less intense than other aspects of Austell Road, which are much more commercial, I see is going to have a negative impact on this community. The last zoning hearing, we turned down a gas station next to residential, and I shared that there are documented issues with putting putting gas stations immediately next to residential sites. You're going to have a noise impact. You are definitely going to have a health impact. You're going to have a property value impact, as well as potentially a criminal impact to that community. And seeing the landscaping, I know there may be some consideration for noise. I don't know what's been done about noise abatement. I think to keep people from running through the gas station to that stabilized residential community, as was shared, which is an older community and deserves protection, I think there should be a fence to keep people from running from that gas station to other areas, at the least if this moves forward. But I can tell you from my knowledge of this area, from my working with residents that live there, this is going to be a disruptive addition. And again, I'm just speaking about some things operationally. From a design perspective, there are Austell Road guidelines. In the zoning analysis, it asked, are there guidelines for this area? Yes. Does this design meet the Austell Road guidelines? No. To me, that's a slap in the face for those community residents that have worked on those guidelines for months, and to put this forward and not even to make sure when this goes through zoning that the design that's being proposed matches that. Why did all of those residents meet for months with community development staff in the first place to put forward something like this? I think this is going to be a disruptive development. I feel sorry for those residents who do not have more advocacy. Plan does not typically advocate for this community. This community is not organized from a zoning perspective, such to the point when they had the senior development that was in District 1, I asked for there to be a community meeting because I knew from my advocacy in District 4 that there would be residents concerned about it. And there was a community meeting where they got a chance to address their concerns. I don't know if such a community meeting occurred here, but at the very least, these residents deserve that. They have put in a lot of sweat equity to try to get those design guidelines in place. They were involved in that senior meeting. Diane, I've seen her at other meetings. She's come to District 4 meetings, as well as some other neighbors. They should be involved in this application because I could assure you this is going to have a disruptive impact on that community. And I cannot support it. At least I would support a continuance for there to be a concerted effort not to meet with Plan, which does not advocate off of Austell Road, to meet with those residents that will have to deal with that day in and day out if this gets approved.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Gamble.
Diane Ehrman has joined Plan to start advocating for in that area. So she is attempting, but to my knowledge, she was the only one who engaged in any correspondence with me in regards to this.
Okay, any other comments? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? Raise your hand, please. Okay, so it passes 3-1 with Commissioner Cupid in opposition.
Thank you for your comments this morning.
Okay, thank you. All right, now I believe it's LUP 7? Okay.
LUP 7 of 2020, Thomas Oliver York III requests a temporary land use permit for to operate a food preparation and service business in land lots 935 and 936 of the 17th district. The property is located on the south side of Grayfield Trace, west of Grayfield Drive. The applicant is present. Is there anyone here in person opposing LUP 7? And Yolanda, is there anyone online opposing LUP 7? Yolanda, is there anyone here opposing LUP 7 online?
There is no one online opposing.
Okay.
Okay, sir. It's all yours.
Great, thank you. I have a presentation, if we could pull that up. Is that possible?
Sure.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for hosting me. Please continue to the next slide. This is an introduction about myself. My name is Oliver York. I live in the Grayfield Trace neighborhood. I have for coming up on 2 years now. I love the community. I love all of my neighbors. They're all, good people. We all get along. A little bit about my background. I've worked in the food and service business, food and beverage business for a while, including 5.5 years at Coca-Cola, as well as various restaurant and catering opportunities. I know the ins and outs of it, and thought that I would like to eventually own my own business and wanted to try my hand at it. So the easiest way to do that, especially given COVID-19, is to run something from the home, so you're not paying rent on or leases on commercial properties until I'm ready to scale up to that step. Next slide. What I'm asking for is to have a base of operation in my basement as a dedicated space away from the rest of the home. This would be to cater festivals in a 10 by 10 or a 10 by 20 tent. Examples are the Dogwood Festival, the Christmas market they do in Centennial Park, as well as the night markets they wanted to do in Peachtree Corners. That I don't think got started this year because of COVID, but there are a lot of events like that that can have caterers or food service come in to provide different dishes. I think I'll be successful at it. I wouldn't be trying it if I didn't. Continue to the next slide. I did get two letters of support. This is my immediate neighbor, Sarah. As you can see in that bottom line, it says, Aaron and I hope you will give Oliver the chance to start his business. He has our full support. And if you'd like to review that further, I'll take a couple more seconds. All right, I continue the next slide, please. And this is another letter of support by my neighbor, Matt. He lives catty corner to me. He's not directly next to me, but he's one over, and we're all in the same cul-de-sac together. Next slide, please. So when I attended the first hearing on June 2nd, we had a lot of discussion, a lot of back and forth, and I was really able to take away a lot from that to better address the concerns of the board. And I've listed the points I agree to in full and will make no exceptions on, which are no signs or marking outside the home of any kind, no employees on site other than myself and my girlfriend who lives with me, who hopefully will be a fiance here in the next couple of weeks. Minimal modifications to the home, which I'm going to get into in further slides. No dedicated company vehicle. I would only rent a vehicle on days in which it would be in use. Standard deliveries by FedEx, UPS, USPS, and Amazon. Fresh groceries are going to come from local vendors like the restaurant depots and Costco and other places like that. I don't mind going and picking that kind of thing up, but I don't need the U.S. food trucks coming into the neighborhood. That won't happen. And I also wanted to offer to do this for a one-year time period. The land use permit normally goes for 2 years, but given that there is some concern around this, I think maybe doing a trial for 1 year, seeing how it goes. And if there are any disruptions or any opposed in a year from now, then it would probably not continue, but I don't foresee that happening. Next slide, please. So talking about modifications to the home, I've already installed floors in the basement that I think have added a lot of value to the home, not only because they look nice and the installer did a great job, but they also are a level 5 PEI rating, which means they're not going to take damage. They're appropriate for commercial settings, but they also have a great look. I would need to add a full home water filtration system. I would like to think that's another value add to a home within a, and then I would need it's required to have a sink in the basement, so that would require a little bit of plumbing. But I put the sink on the right because that's most likely what it will look like. However, if and when it is time for me to leave the home, hopefully in a long time from now, I wouldn't leave a sink like that in. I wouldn't want that to disrupt the neighborhood or, you know, the feel of when people come in to look at it. I would replace it with an arts and crafts sink that would be more appropriate for kids. I would want to get the maximum sale price out of the home as well, so I'm not trying to leave it as a half restaurant situation. I would want it to have all of the function and feature of just a normal residential home. Next slide, please. So I wanted to acknowledge that Georgia is the #1 state for business, and I think that's a really cool thing, and that's part of what encouraged me to be able to do this. When I saw that, I noted that, you know, Georgia is business friendly, and I hope that does weigh into this. Next slide, please. And then looking forward, just some thoughts I had on this as I close out the presentation. I'm always going to respect my neighbors. As you can see, I've got a good relationship with 2 of them to write me letters of support, and there have been no opposition. If this is successful, I'm going to want to scale up and move to a commercial setting, but that takes a lot of capital and a lot of risk, and I'm not ready to do this full-time at this point in my career. And then making this work is going to require, the blue-collar background, which I think I have from my years in college in the restaurant business, as well as white-collar know-how, which I think I've had in my professional experience. So I do think I'm prepared to make this success. And I'll open it up for comments.
Okay, thank you. And there was nobody on the line, correct, John?
Correct.
All right, so with that, I'll turn it over to, should I get this right here? Commissioner Ott?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John, a couple questions before we talk. What's your first name? I'm sorry.
Oliver. I go by Oliver.
All right, Oliver and I chat. Sprinklers. Is it required having the commercial kitchen downstairs, John? It might be a fire, I don't know if
Let me
anybody's
take a look
here.
at the fire comments.
The other thing is, I know that Oliver kind of refers to, moving it into a commercial space and everything, but since he's doing catering, is it not a commercial kitchen?
I'm looking at the comments, Commissioner, and it looks like they have to comply with the fire marshal's requirements for commercial kitchen and also the health department's requirements.
Right, so Oliver, are you familiar with what those are?
Yes, I am. So I'm familiar to that. I would need to pass three things. The first is the land use. They say I've talked to people within government who have told me, do land use first. Once that happens, you can do simultaneously health inspection as well as fire marshal. I would have to meet with those and get theirs approval as well, but they said start here and.
Okay, right, I mean, yeah, they're having you start here because there's no sense having them come in if you don't get the permission here. The reason I bring it up is because there is the possibility, and I don't know, okay, I don't know the fire code about that, but there is the possibility you might have to put sprinklers in, okay, especially since it's in the basement. And I don't know all what's involved commercial kitchen permits. The only ones I've ever, ever dealt with when we were doing the stadium, because you might have to have a certain type of hood over the cooking. So it may be a little more involved. It's not, I can tell you right now, it's not going to be just an inspection.
Sure, and I don't think I would require a hood because I'm not going to have an open stovetop. That's not a part of my plan. It would just be an oven that can be brought in and removed easy, not a permanent
Okay.
fixture of any
All right.
kind.
All right, let's see, where am I? So the basement modifications, I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate that. Well, first off, let me say that when I first looked at this yesterday, I was totally opposed. But I have to say that you're probably the first person in my 12 years on this board and 4 years in the planning commission that actually understands what a land use permit is for. I mean, you could not have stated it more clearly as to what the intent is when you talked about the fact that you wanted to kind of get a business started and then as you grew, move into commercial space. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen land use permits where that's not how it's used. So I commend you on understanding that how it's supposed to work and what it's used for. So I can tell you that got me off of the absolute no, because you clearly understand how it's supposed to work. And I appreciate the fact that you, in thinking of your neighbors about the modifications of the house, I'm just not sure, John, that we can stipulate that, because I really don't want to get into the dictating remodeling his lower basement. I appreciate that you're willing to do that.
And this permit's only for 12 months, Commissioner Ott.
Right.
So once it's over, the stuff has to go. He can't have a commercial kitchen in his basement anymore.
Okay, so some of that's where I'm going with the question to you, John. Do I need to put that in a stipulation, or is it automatic?
No, it's automatic.
Okay, all right.
Other than the sink, which I would convert to an arts and crafts sink, would you want the whole home water filtration removed, or the
Well, no, I think where John's going with this is that when you talk to the health department and when you talk to the fire marshal, there are going to be other things besides what you've mentioned that I think that they're going to probably require or expect, because the biggest thing I know from the health department is going to be making sure that the food stays healthy and clean and everything else. So I think what John's referring to is anything that's required for that to get the commercial kitchen permit, those are things that are going to have to come out. I think what would be good, and it's not normally the way we do it, but what I would like you to do is, you've heard us refer to stipulation letters. What I would like you to do is take the things that you mentioned in your presentation. And so I'm going to have to craft a motion here but what I'd like you to do is write a letter that will be submitted to the county that says, basically in writing, that you are going to even though the sink may not be required to be removed, what I'm going to do is have you put a letter that's going to be submitted to Mr. Peterson that says that, you're going to be removing the sink and that, those kind of things. Normally, we would have it done for today, but, so it's, like I said, it's a little bit unorthodox. I mean, I have your presentation to go on and you did have the slides in there and we have a copy of the presentation. So John, I'm going to make reference to the fact that Oliver's agreeing to submit a letter as to the modifications that will be removed if the business ceases to operate out of the house.
Okay,
Does that work for you?
that will work.
Okay. All right. So I will make a motion to approve land use permit number 7 for 1 year, 12 months, with the applicant agreeing to submit a stipulation letter outlining the changes that will be made to the property if and when the business ceases to operate from the home. Also, can we put up, and I don't know if we can do this, can we put up the slide that he had with the conditions that he changed based on the planning commission meeting?
If you push the button at the bottom right.
Yeah, there we go, right there. Okay. So, and the conditions that I'm going to put on are listed here, but I'm going to read them for the record. No signs or markings outside the home of any kind. No employees on site other than current residents of the home. Now, understanding, of course, that if you're doing catering, they're going to have to come and help get this stuff to take it someplace. But, no employees working. Minimal modifications to the home, and we just talked about the letter you're going to submit. No dedicated company vehicle to be parked at the property.
Correct. I plan to the U-Haul has a good deal where they can rent a commercial
Right,
van
but the
for
reason,
cheap, so,
the reason
yeah.
I'm adding no dedicated company vehicle parked to the property, I don't want you to not be able to, if down the road you decide it's just too expensive to rent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want you to not be able to buy a vehicle because of this stipulation. So the intent here is to not have a company vehicle parked on the property.
I agree to those terms.
So that one will be changed, no dedicated company vehicle parked on the property. Standard deliveries by FedEx, UPS, all those listed and then 12 months. All other staff comments and recommendations, not otherwise in conflict. Does that work for you, John?
That's good.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, so some comments,
For
Commissioner
discussion.
Cupid?
Just a question, John. Just a question. I presume what's applying here is like a food cottage license? If he's making food out of his
It's a little
home?
more intense than that.
It's more, okay, it's to ask if there's any differentiation.
Yeah, 'cause
Because
he-
you're saying he has to have a commercial kitchen
Yes,
versus someone else just being able to make goods in their home.
that's right.
Okay, and what's the distinguishing factor? Is it the
Well,
type of?
this is more of a catering situation than someone just
Caterer.
making small things to sell.
Okay. All right, I've dealt with a business that had similar requirements, so just, you'll become friends with the fire department with the commercial kitchen in that. I wish you the best. I know your permit's for 12 months, but I wish you the best in ramping up over that time.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And yeah, I've looked at the cottage food license. That was one of the first things I looked at. They don't allow you to sell any beverages really that aren't bottle can already, and they also limit it to just baked goods, so you couldn't serve a sandwich.
Okay, thank you.
And John, one last addition to this, and I'm sure the second will be okay, is that the land use permit is approved provided that he meets all the other requirements for the health department and the fire department.
Correct.
Okay.
And Commissioner, to that question, not knowing how long it's going to take him to get the fire marshal's approval and the health department approval, could the land use permit, the 1-year time frame, be from the date of approval of those two?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so the 12 months will be from the approval of all the necessary county departments.
Thank you.
I have a major concern. Does your girlfriend know that you just announced?
Well, I wasn't going to bring that up.
You realize?
She's on
You
board.
realize this is live? This is a record, this is
It might be the
record?
first time in 16 years that I've heard a proposal.
She,
at a
she
zoning
is,
hearing.
tucked away at work. She is so busy at work, I'm not concerned at all about her watching this hearing.
Hey, so obviously, you're obviously a man and you believe that, all right? Just want, if I was you, when you leave here after
You
you
better
vote
be
on
telling,
this,
that's
I
right,
would
because this
call
is being
her right now.
recorded.
Because some of your friends may be watching this and they said, did you know?
Well, I hope it'll be okay.
Really,
Congratulations, I hope.
better be a really nice ring.
With that, I call the question. All in favor, raise your hand. Passes 4-0. Congratulations.
Thank you.
On many accounts.
Okay, moving on. Land use permit number 8 of 2020. Richard R. Barwick requests a temporary land use permit to allow more adults and vehicles than the county code allows in land lots 28 and 49 of the 20th district. The property is located on the north side of Hickory Grove Road, west of Lake Park Terrace. Is the applicant present? Is the applicant here, Richard R. Barwick? Is there anyone here opposed to land use permit number 8? And Yolanda, is there anyone online opposed to land use permit number 8?
At this time, we have no further virtual opposition for any cases. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, looks like the applicant is not present and there's no opposition present.
All right, so this is Commissioner Gamble, right?
Yes, so I would like to make my motion to deny LUP 8, subject to the recommendations of the Planning Commission that the applicant come into compliance within 90 days of our decision.
We have a second. Any discussion? Commissioner Cupid.
I'm not sure why he's not here, Commissioner Cupid. He was aware that the hearing was for today for this.
I just never see try to reach out to the applicant.
Okay with that, any other discussion? I'll call.
We're almost done. I don't think he's gonna have enough time to get here if he decides to show up. And, this was a complaint.
So Commissioner Cupid, this was a result of a code, okay.
You good? Okay, call the question. Passes 4-0. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, now we're on to OB 12. Okay.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Board. The first item you're going to hear today is other business number 12, 2020, which is to consider a request for a gated community for Abbas Haderi regarding property located on the southeast side of Paper Mill Road, east of Gateside Place, in land lots 5, 6, and 74 of the First District. By way of background, the subject property is zoned R20, and the applicant would like to make this a gated community subject to the Cobb County Development Standard number 424. The applicant has submitted a site plan in which all the lots meet the R20 minimum lot size and setbacks. The impervious surface will be averaged out over the entire property, so 35% maximum is not exceeded. The applicant has submitted a letter detailing their proposal and demonstrating they are meeting the legal requirements of the gated community development standard. The road and the detention pond would be owned and maintained by the HOA. The applicant has submitted a letter of agreeable conditions, which is attached for your review. The staff would ask the board to conduct a public hearing and consider the proposed request for a gated community. And Yolanda, is there anyone online opposed to this case?
No, there's nobody else online.
Okay, no one else online? Is there anyone here in person?
There's no more opposition online for any cases. No one online wishes to speak in opposition.
Okay, is there anyone here in person wishing to? Should be here momentarily. Okay, there's one person on their way, so we'll hear a presentation from the applicant first, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, fine. Yep, right there. Not sure what he's doing.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Garver Sams, and it's the first time I've appeared at this lectern in 3 months. It feels good to be back here, so thank you for that. In consideration of the COVID virus, Mr. York, his girlfriend may not be watching, but I know my mother, and where she lives, the Wynwood community is watching, and Wynwood is one of the few retirement communities that has had no reported cases of COVID. So I wanted to give a shout out to them. No, they're not my client. I don't represent them, but they deserve that. That's tough in these days and times. The property at issue being shown here, this consists of a 3.36 acre tract of land. As you can see, it's on Paper Mill Road, just east of Gateside, which is a subdivision. As you can see, it has contiguity to the subject property. We're zoned R20, Gateside R15. The land use map in this area calls for very low density residential, which is 0 to 2 units per acre. The entirety of our property is zoned R20. It meets all the strictures of R20, and obviously this is configured well below the 2.0 max on your future land use map. We're not seeking a zoning. We're not seeking any variances. Staff has concluded in its analysis and the direction we've taken from them that this is an appropriate use of the property in terms of meeting both the gated community, the R20, and the future land use map. Really for the past 40 plus years, Paper Mill Road's kind of been a template or an exemplar of high-end residential construction and enclaves for like-minded people. This is going to be very similar, if not identical, to that in terms of its low intensity, but it's high-end, quality-built, single-family, custom homes that will be there. Before the filing of this application, my client secured off-site easements for both water and sewer, so there's nothing that this is contingent upon or subject to in terms of off-site easements. As you can see, we went through the process of plan review, and so we're firmly ensconced in that process, contingent upon this gated community being approved. And you don't see many requests for gated communities. The only other one that Mr. Peterson and I could find is one on Lower Roswell Road, or is it Roswell Road? Roswell Road, called Stonegate, I believe is the name of it, that has come before you as a gated community. They may have others that evolved into gated communities, but in many instances, that also is accompanied with a request for change in zoning, where this one, of course, does not. So my clients secured the appropriate sign-offs for that. We filed our original stipulation letter on March the 3rd, 2020. Then we met with the district commissioner and revised that and the plan and resubmitted a revised plan and revised stipulation letter on March the 12th. And most recently, on June the 8th, we've submitted some additional imagery, one of which you're looking at now, and an additional letter with some additional stipulations and conditions. So you should have all three of those. The architectural style and composition will be as is in your package. As you can see, large homes, 5,000 square feet and up, $1.5 million plus price points. And I know you don't dictate price points, but just to give you an idea of the type of homes that will be there. There are probably 25 different regulations under the gated community ordinance that are required. We meet every one of them, including the positioning of the gate, the width, the distance, the depth. We've also included, as per the most revised imagery that you've seen, along the frontage of the property, a 10-foot no access easement, heavily landscaped areas, and we've defined that in the stipulation letter, so we don't just say heavy landscaping. We say the genus and species and type of all the shrubs and the plants that'll be there. Also, you've got imagery, Cornelius, if you could move it up a bit for the next one. There you go. That's imagery there about how the subdivision entrance, the gated community will look. That will also be consistent with the materials and architectural style and composition of the wall that will also go along the frontage there. In between, there's going to be a sidewalk, there's going to be the landscaping, there's going to be the wall. And there's a 10-foot no-access easement, which almost is superfluous in terms of the fact that people, it's going to be a wall there, so I don't think we're going to see any pedestrian or vehicular attempts to gain access to Paper Mill Road. I can go through the plethora of gated community requirements, but as Mr. Peterson has said, we meet all of those. We're also submitting a landscape plan which will accompany what you're seeing here during plan review. All the yards will be sodded and landscaped and irrigated. Stormwater detention that was shown in the previous one will be screened from view. Totally, it's above ground, it's not underground, but it'll be attractively done and submitted subject to the district commissioner's review and approval. And then there's a 20-foot maintained buffer within 30-foot setback around the entirety of the perimeter of the property as well. Typically, you don't see residential buffers from residential to residential, but you will have that in this case. And in addition to that, we will, as the gated community ordinance requires, will indemnify and hold Cobb County harmless with respect to anything related to this proposal. When you do a gated community, you can't cut off access to other public streets or public thoroughfares and things of that nature. And it requires not only clauses in the deeds of conveyance, but clauses in the covenants, conditions, and restrictions, which also grants the ability for stormwater management and/or the water system and others from the county to be able to get in to the community, as well as the universal Knox box for fire apparatus and safety, and public safety vehicles. We also have to do, and we will submit a MOA, memorandum of understanding to the county attorney for his review and approval prior to a spoonful of dirt being turned on the property. DOT is requested and will agree to the installation of a decel lane and taper, sidewalk, curb, and gutter along the subject property's frontage and, of course, the 10-foot no-access easement. We are asking, even though this isn't a rezoning, and I guess it's applicable, for the district commissioner to be able to make minor modifications as this continues through the plan review process. And if the district commissioner, rather than the county attorney, wants to see the MOU first, then we're fine with that. We're not worried about the procedural aspects of that. Again, we meet all the components of the gated community, R20, and we do ask that you approve this as your staff recommends. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr.
Thank you, sir. And I believe we had one in opposition. Okay.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Fred Wachter. I had submitted some written comments and information to the Commissioners over the last several days. We didn't get the latest filing, obviously, until it was submitted last week. I reside at the property that is, as you're looking at this, adjacent to the southern property line of this proposed subdivision. So as you can see, the corner of this property, the southeast corner of the property, is literally in my front yard. So it is of significant importance to me as well.
Let me just jump in. Do you live at the end of the cul-de-sac? Is that your house?
I do live in the cul-de-sac. That is my house, correct.
Okay,
The one that's
all right.
being served.
Just wanted to, so we knew where you were.
Absolutely, thank you. So obviously this is vitally important to myself as well as to the rest of the residents that live in the Column Gate community, as well as the surrounding neighborhood. We essentially have three main concerns that we wanted to address with the commission. The first is with regard to the setback from Paper Mill Road. What has been provided indicates that they are attempting to utilize a 25-foot setback from Paper Mill Road. In reviewing the zoning ordinance under R20, if the property faces or fronts on one public road, the setback should be 35 to 40 feet. We're talking about Paper Mill Road. Y'all are familiar with it. There are multi-acre properties. The houses are not that close to Paper Mill Road. In accordance with the zoning ordinance and the character of Paper Mill Road, we would ask that you require the minimum setback from Paper Mill Road to be 40 feet. It's important to note that in order to be able to accomplish a 6-lot subdivision on that property, they have created a scenario where they now have a private road and a private detention facility. Obviously, having a private detention facility right next to my property causes me concern, as well as the other neighbors whose property will adjoin that detention facility. So for them to be able to maximize the use of this property by putting 6 homes on it by using a private road, I don't think they can double dip and then say, well, we've got 2 roads, so we only need to have 25 feet from Paper Mill Road. You can't really have it both ways. If you're going to use a public road in order to be able to squeeze the maximum amount of houses on the property that you can, then you need to go by the fact that you've only got 1 public road, and therefore the setback should be 40 feet. The next issue deals with the impervious coverage on the property. There have been several iterations of what had been proposed. Initially, they had proposed that the impervious coverage issue would be distributed across all of the lots and average. This is a very, the topography on this property slopes directly south. It goes from Paper Mill, goes up or flat slightly, but almost straight down towards the southern part. You can see that from the topography that's now on the screen. So in averaging impervious surfaces, that clearly presents a problem for any of the properties that would be downhill from this property, which is essentially everybody. The latest iteration that had been filed indicated that they were going to maintain the impervious percentage for each individual lot, but there's a note on the preliminary site plan that says individual lot impervious areas should not be exceeded without verification that the total subdivision impervious area will not be exceeded. We don't want that, obviously. Each lot needs to stand on its own based on the regulations for impervious surfaces. If you were to have all of the impervious surfaces on the higher side of the property, obviously the people on the lower side of the property are going to get the brunt of that water runoff. And the regulations are obviously designed to avoid and to prevent that. The final issue that I wanted to bring to your attention is it was evidence in the some of the architectural drawings about the frontage on Paper Mill Road and the gate, and you can see it from this as well. There was a portion in the northeast section of this property that was zoned R30. Somehow in the last 4 months, that property got lopped off in the process of making an application for this subdivision. And interestingly enough, that property was transferred by deed to the real estate agent that formerly had this property listed. I don't know the relevance of that. I don't know what their intentions are. But I do know that we're going to be left with a triangle of property on the north side of this property that is not part of this subdivision. And I believe that the commission should inquire further as to what the intentions are with regard to that property, since it was owned by a common property owner and clearly was removed from the property in making this application. My other question would be, in looking at what has been provided, it looks like there's a wall along the Paper Mill section of the road, but then when it jogs east off of Paper Mill, does the wall continue? Does the wall not continue? I mean, none of this has been clear. Does the wall continue across the property that's no longer part of the subdivision? It's just very ambiguous as to what's happening with this piece of property, and I think that it's worth inquiry by the commission in order to make that determination as to whether that meets all of the specific requirements and the intent and the character of the paper mill corridor. Finally, with respect to my specific situation and the other neighbors in Column Gate, I heard Mr. Sams mention something about a 20-foot landscape buffer around the entire property, but I don't recall seeing that. I know that it referenced a 35-foot building line and things of that nature. I do know that when it comes to the southern property line, I think that would be almost impossible to have a 20-foot landscape buffer based on the detention facility plan that they've provided, because what they've shown on their drawings is essentially a 10-foot buffer, a 10-foot drainage easement, and then the wall. So literally, the wall from the detention facility is going to be 20 feet off my property line. I recognize that while that may be specifically within the regulations and something that's permissible, I mean, clearly it's the smallest part of the detention facility, and if that got moved north another 10 or 20 feet, the change on the front elevation of that on the northern side of the detention facility would be minimal, because the amount that would be lost by moving that further from my property would be insignificant. So in summary, we would ask that you require the minimum setback from Paper Mill Road to be 40 feet, that there not be any allowance for the impervious coverage to drop below the required maximum on any of the specific lots, to inquire further into the adjacent R30 property that the applicant or that the former owner had recently transferred, and to the extent that there were any conversation to be had about moving the detention facility, obviously we'd appreciate that as well. You know, might be important to note, at least it is to me and to our neighbors, no one has approached us to discuss any of this subdivision with us since the rezoning application that was filed last year. Nothing. We don't get notified when hearings are canceled or postponed. We keep showing up here trying to assert our opinion, and it seems like the applicant's position is, this is my property, I'm going to do with it what I want and within what the law allows. And it just, it would have been nice if they'd come to us and said, what do you think about this? How can we make this work so that you all are comfortable with it? Nobody's against them developing the property. We clearly recognize that there's value to that and that they should be able to develop it within the current regulations. We would just ask for those specific things for the commission to look into those further and to heed our requests. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
On the current location, there's a tennis court there. I think that's what that is. And it appears like it's almost a 20-foot drop off between the tennis court and your house.
I
It's actually,
just did
it may be
the math.
more
I
than
did the
that.
math, and the detention pond, going from where the detention pond shows to your house is, it's about 8-foot drop.
Okay, but from the tennis court right now, it's about 20 feet down to your house. So how does that runoff handle now?
I'm glad you asked me that. I have stood out there in the pouring rain at the property line.
Yeah.
Nothing. We get no water because the tennis court's not even there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But even when the tennis court was there, we didn't have it. We get no water coming across that property line, zero. I've taken video of it, I'm happy to share it with you, but there is, in torrential rains, never crosses our property line.
Tim, what's the, I know you can measure with GIS, what's the distance lengthwise from the corner of the tennis court to the corner of the property? So it's about 140 feet. Yeah, it's about 140 feet,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. That's a lot of pervious.
Yeah. And then the second question is, so you mentioned the detention. What would be your request?
That it be moved farther from my property line.
How far? Much farther?
I mean, right now, it is essentially 20 feet from my property
Right,
line.
I see that.
If it got moved to 40 feet from my property line, 50 feet from my property line, clearly that would be
Okay.
something that
I'm
we
just
could.
trying to find what the middle ground might be
Right.
here. Okay, I have no other questions. Anyway, any other commissioners have questions besides me?
No, I got,
Sure, go
my
ahead.
question
Go
was
ahead.
not
Yeah.
No, I have questions for staff.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
That was a great presentation.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, John, let's start with you. You know what I'm going to ask, don't you? Talk to me about the road.
Okay,
I know that just purely front, rear, side, that we're talking about a side setback, but I had not heard the major road thing before.
well, on a standard lot on Paper Mill Road, if this was one lot, it would be a 40-foot front, and then be 10-foot sides and a 35-foot rear. However, this is a 6-lot subdivision, Commissioner, so we're gonna treat the setbacks on this like we would any other subdivision, so it makes sense. Because if you have a 40-foot front on every single lot, it's gonna be on the side of every single lot going down the road, and that's gonna make for a very thin building area. So we're gonna try to interject some common sense and call the setbacks how they would be if this was a public road. So it'd be a 35-foot front on the interior road and a 25-foot corner side along Paper Mill Road.
All right, I hear what you're saying, common sense and all that. That's not what the rules say.
And that's the way the board has done it for the other private road subdivision that was approved prior, which
Once again, I go back to, what does the book say the rules are?
it's a 40-foot front along a major collector.
Correct. So based on the book, the rules, it should be 40 feet. Disregard what previous boards did, common sense and everything else. What does the book say?
Book says 40 feet.
Okay, all right. All right, so let's talk about the R30.
Okay.
Little piece that was removed. I mean, you and I both know why it was removed, because then it didn't need to be rezoned. Because if it had a portion that was R30 and R20, they wanted to come in for an R20 subdivision, it was gonna have to come in for a zoning, because it would have been being all moved to R20. Now, nothing illegal about what they did, just for the applicant, or the opposition, legal. You know, you can sell property all the time, and if it's recorded properly and everything else. But I mean, you know, let's be real about this. More than likely it was done so they didn't have to come in for a zoning. You heard Mr. Sams talk about the fact that, and this is, I think, maybe the first time in 16 years of doing zoning that I've seen a gated community come in just to be a gated community. So it is, like Mr. Sams said, it is indeed a rarity, but I have no doubt that it was taken off totally legally to avoid having to come in for a rezoning. All right, so let's, Dave Braden. Oh, he was here. Is he still here? Yeah, there he is.
Hi.
Well, I gave you a heads up, or you're going to call you up anyway.
Dave Braden with Stormwater Management Division.
Right, so we, Mr. Chairman, just so you know, Dave and I talked ahead of time. I too have an issue with the sharing of the impervious or averaging. I know it's totally legal. It's once again, it's in the code. However, what Dave and I talked about would be that if indeed the board goes forward with this, that the individual lots impervious would be approved first by stormwater and then by the district commissioner. My concerns are, and I think the opposition mentioned it, that as you go along, if you happen to be number 5 or number 6, however many lots there are, you could end up not having a whole lot of space to do what you want to do. And then pools and everything else that happen to come into these things, because this doesn't have a community pool, it becomes an issue. Let's talk about the detention. I know that this is being proposed as above ground detention, and my estimation as to the distance from the detention pond to the opposition's house, and I keep saying opposition because I forget your name, I apologize.
Fred.
Okay, Fred, from Fred's house, is about, it's about a 6 to 8 foot elevation change. Are they proposing that they're going to dig down into the ground to do this detention pond, or is it going to be an elevated wall?
They have not done the design, I have not seen a design for that wall yet, but my guess based on the topo is probably going to be a combination of both. Partly in, and then the very bottom end will probably be.
Right, the very bottom end happens to be the one that's up against Fred's yard, and so assuming that most detention pond walls are anywhere from 5 to 6 to 8 feet tall, we're now looking at about a 16 foot. The top of the wall is about 16 feet above Fred's house. I'm just looking at the topo lines. It's about 6 to 8 foot.
Yeah.
drop in elevation to Fred's
10 to
house,
12.
and then
10 to
if I
12.
add 6 feet to that for the wall, we're at 12 feet. So I have a problem with that.
Yeah.
So, all right, that's all my questions. Thanks.
Okay.
Any other board members have questions before I get to see what the staff recommendation is? Okay, staff recommendation, John?
Mr. Chairman and Board, the staff would recommend the board approve the request subject to the June 8th, 2020 stipulation letter from Mr. Garva Sams, subject to the site plans received or located within the other business packets, Cobb DOT comments and recommendations, stormwater management comments and recommendations, and fire department comments and recommendations.
Anybody have any comments before I call the question?
Well, I don't have a motion.
I would just,
I haven't done a motion yet.
okay, all right.
So, all right, well, let me just kind of
Yeah.
put your comment stuff here. All right, to the opposition. The issue here, and yes, would it result in 6 lots? Maybe, maybe not. But the issue here is this is not a rezoning. So based on the code, which we've already talked about, the setback issue, if the applicant withdrew this application, they can still build here with the private roads. They couldn't have the gate, because remember, they're only here for the gate. So I have a couple options. I can sit here and deny it, okay? They could come right back and turn around and just do it without a gate, still have private streets, just wouldn't have a gate. And they would just have to meet the county code, which we know the lot sizes are greater than 20,000 square feet. The detention meets code. The only real issue is the setbacks, okay? Now, obviously, staff would be requiring 40-foot setbacks, but, so the other option, I have 2 more options. One, I could continue it, or hold it, I guess, since we've heard it. I could hold it with the direction to the applicant to address some of the issues that we just talked about. Or I can approve it and impose certain things, but it makes it difficult for me to deal with the 5 or 6 lots, whatever they might end up with, in addressing the other issues like setbacks. I'm inclined to continue it, to give the applicant an opportunity to talk with you, to have the developer come out to your property, take a look and see exactly what the detention would be like. Because my concern is if they come in with just a regular subdivision without the gate, that they can meet almost all the code and you're still going to be looking at some kind of wall. So if I keep it under the control of the board, I have a lot more ability to get things, to make life a little bit better for you and your family and your neighbors. And so, so what I'm inclined to do is, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion to continue this to or hold this until the July 21st hearing, with instructions to the applicant that the setbacks along Paper Mill Road have to meet the code, and that they need to work out with Mr. Braden that instead of just straight out averaging of the impervious, that it will be set up that stormwater and then the district commissioner will approve the each lot for impervious, and that the ultimate buffer on the detention will need to be heavily landscaped so that Fred and that his neighbors do not have to be looking at, as Mr. Hovey used to say, the burned out basement wall. And then also in a revised stipulation letter, Mr. Sampson, that's where we get to, is that the final elevations will be approved by the district commissioner with special emphasis placed on those elevations that face Paper Mill Road. And also in 6D in your March 12th letter, I would add district commissioner for approval. And then I think a little bit of clarification on 6E as to who will be maintaining that buffer and how will the residents or the neighbors be assured that the people that buy these homes will not disturb that 20-foot maintained buffer. So all those things are issues that need to be addressed over the next 30 days. So that's my motion.
I'll second it. Any other discussion? Call a question. Passes 4-0. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, Board, the last item on today's agenda is other business item number 29 of 2020, which is to consider a site plan approval for Pedro Santana regarding rezoning application Z167 of 2005 for property located on the southwesterly side of Glen Creek Court, westerly of Clara Morris Chase in land lot 138 of the 18th district. It should be 19th district. By way of background, the subject property was rezoned to conservation subdivision in 2005 for residential subdivision. One of the requirements of the CS zoning district is for the Board of Commissioners to approve site plans for accessory structures that are over 200 square feet. The applicant has built a 480 square foot batting cage, which is 16 feet by 30 feet, for his daughter in the backyard. The applicant daughter plays softball and needs a place to practice due to the COVID-19 quarantine. The batting cage is a fabric material over a metal frame, and the applicant has submitted photos of the batting cage for review. The applicant's property does back up to the detention pond, and staff's understanding that the neighbor directly next door is agreeable with the batting cage. Staff would ask the Board of Commissioners to conduct a public hearing and consider the proposed site plan approval. Is the applicant present? The director of the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to this item? And there's no one online to oppose it, Mr. Chairman. Would the applicant please come forward to be sworn in?
Mr. Chairman, before Mr. Santana begins his presentation, and then I'll leave it up to him, it has been brought to my attention that this is more of an issue between the HOA, Architectural Oversight Committee, and the applicant. I would like to propose that we hold this for 30 days and allow him to work this through his HOA before this comes to the board for hearing. So I guess, Mr. Santana, I know I had a chance to speak with you briefly during our break.
Yes.
Are you aware that your HOA Architectural Control Committee has sent you a letter in regards to your batting cage and then also?
No, I have not
pool?
received that yet.
You have not received that. So, Mr. Chairman, since he has not received this information, I would like to request that we hold this for 30 days to allow Mr. Santana to go back and work this issue out with his HOA board prior to coming to us.
Okay, I'd like to hear, I know this is one of those things like, you came all the way out here.
Yeah, it's just been ongoing,
Yeah.
you know.
The good news is the batting cage is still there, right?
Yeah.
So.
And
and
we
like-
haven't used it in
Oh, I see.
the last 3-4 weeks.
Because
You know, the park's open, so now she's practicing again.
at the parks,
Well, we moved into that community because it butts to Lost Mountain Park,
okay,
and that's where she plays softball.
Sure.
So it made sense for us to move there.
okay.
COVID happens, she can't play anymore. You know, she was getting a little bit depressed, had some anxiety. I built a cage.
Okay, so, but but my understanding is that as of yesterday, you can now have league play at the parks. So is she back in that program?
Yeah, we're playing again.
Okay, okay. All right, I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
I just, you know, as you
I mean,
know,
we just don't hit in it. You know, we play Frisbee in there. She's a pitcher. We pitch.
okay. Well, I do, I guess the question I have to the county attorney is, she's made a motion, okay? And it's been seconded, but does the process require us to still hear something from John, or can we just go ahead and act on the motion?
Well, it's the commissioner's prerogative at this point in time to make the motion. It's up
Okay.
to the board whether to accept it or not, because in essence, was before, in the situation that Commissioner Ott has, we had a hearing, then he made a motion to
Right,
basically send
right.
it back and work it out. She's just making the motion now before we actually start with the hearing, that the HOA, regardless of what you guys do here, the HOA still would have control over whether he takes it down or not, so.
I just think it's more a procedural issue. I want to make sure that, you know, that we have a process here for other business. And so the motion obviously is legitimate, all right? I just want to make sure that the process such is that what we're doing it is the appropriate approach even though it's going to inconvenience the applicant right now, it's a motion that we can move forward on because it is part of the process acknowledged by the board.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
And I think, Mr. Chairman, one of the reasons that I seconded it is, the board has made it very clear in the past that we do not get into civil matters, which HOAs are. And so the thing is, if we were to hear it and make a decision, let's just say to approve it.
Right.
We now put the HOA in a legal limbo because Mr. Santana could say, well, the Board of Commissioners approved it.
Right.
The HOA could say, our rules don't allow it.
Right.
So I think that, allow him to work with the HOA because it may be that if they don't allow it, he has to take it down and then he doesn't need to come in front of us. But we shouldn't put something in place that conflicts with HOA. That's what we've done in the past and we can't.
But we may have local ordinances that do conflict with HOAs as we speak. And typically, if there's a covenant in an HOA property, that's still going to control what can occur with that property if that activity falls under the covenant.
Correct, because when the person bought the property, in this case, Mr. Santana, he committed his property to this particular covenants of that property. And so it wouldn't be whether we have laws that would conflict or not. It'd be whether he has restrictions on his property, on his title, that would limit what his use is.
Okay.
So.
All right.
I guess,
Sorry, go ahead, I apologize.
yes, I mean, I can understand trying to work it out, but typically we operate where we do not even weigh that unless that is a part of our process. For instance, when we had one of the initial backyard chicken ordinances did talk about an HOA or surrounding residents, and we took that into consideration here. But I'm uncomfortable with us modifying anything that we do based on an HOA policy because that HOA covenant is still going to cover your property irrespective of what we do.
Yeah, so how did I get here?
I can't tell you, I don't know. I can't tell you, but
Yeah, it's not uncommon.
Yeah, there's some things that we can make decisions on, but if that activity is in your covenants, you're gonna still have to follow the covenants of the HOA.
Mr. Santana, it's not uncommon to happen because planning staff and everything we have recorded copies of covenants in the deed books, but it's not a requirement that planning staff go and read the covenants on every single neighborhood. And so what happens, the assumption is made that when you put up the sign 30 days prior, that somebody in the HOA would have seen it and said, oh, wait, what is going on? And it sounds like what happened was that the letter from the HOA is just kind of didn't get there in time. And so, and so I think like I said, I'm looking at it from the standpoint of, you could do the presentation here, but if you can't do it with the HOA, you might as well find that out from them first.
Yeah, they're horrible anyway. All right.
To hear, I'm sorry personally you sat here for 2 hours.
All right, so, discussions? If not, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? So it passes 3-1 with Commissioner Cooper in opposition. Sorry about your inconvenience, sir.
So what happens now?
You go back, respond to the HOA letter first, and come back and see what happens.
I don't have to.
July 20.
Next month, right.
Well, which one?
We still have you on the agenda for next month, all right? But we want you to go back and talk to your HOA first, all right?
July's a little hard for me.
We'll look it out with you.
Okay.
We're reasonable.
All right, I didn't know. First time with this thing. All right.
No, just like you, just not like us.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Have a good day, sir. That was good.